This video will document the partial removal of the dash in a 2015 F-150 Lariat with a 40-20-40 front seating configuration. This is done so that the temperature mix motor for the passenger side can be replaced. The XLT does not have dual zone climate control, so if the temperature is stuck at one setting, replacement of the motor does not require removal of the dash. For Lariat, Platinum, and King Ranch models, the temperature mix motor for the driver's side is in the same easy-to-reach location as the XLT under the glove box, but the motor for the passenger side requires removal of the dash. Failure of this component is common, and there are videos online that show how to replace it in the model years 2014 and earlier. But 2015 was a major redesign of the F-150, and the passenger side motor became much harder to replace. I don't know for sure if later model years made this motor more accessible, but my dad's 2018 F-150 looks very similar to my 2015 on the interior, and so I suspect that this video might be of some use for model years after 2015 as well. This video does not show removal of the whole dash. There is a wiring harness that is well integrated to the dash components that extends to the rear seats and rear of the cabin under the carpet in the center next to the ductwork for the rear floor vents. In order to remove the entire dash completely, the seats and carpeting would have to be removed as well. But that isn't necessary for access to the HVAC system, the passenger side airbag, or the heater core. Okay, this is a 2015 F-150 Lariat. The dash needs to come out because the passenger side AC is not switching to warm. It is stuck in the cold position, and that would mean that the motor that operates the door flap, here's a new one right here, is busted. So I have a new one, I need to put it in. Problem is the location is kind of in back of this airbag, behind this vent, straight down from here. You can pull off the center console stuff right here for the radio. You can't reach it, the vents are in the way. You can pull this off, you can't reach it, vents are in the way. You can't remove the airbag without removing the entire dash. So there's no way to get to the actuator door motor without removing the entire dash. So this whole thing's got to come out. Now this Lariat does not have a flow-through console. This has a seat in the center of the front row, which is unusual for the Lariats. This was custom done, and normally if you were removing the dash you would have to deal with that. I'll walk through the removal of this dash, and at least we'll see what that process is like for the non-flow-through console. Alright, we'll start with the battery. Going to remove the negative terminal using a 10mm nut. There's a 10mm nut, I'll use a 10mm ratchet. This will shimmy up and off. Glove box removal is a multi-step process. To start off, there are two tabs to be slid out underneath the glove box. They are, there's one right here. So there's one pin, and then I gotta get another pin on the other side. That guy right there. And there it is. Incidentally, that guy right there, that is the motor for the door that controls airflow to the driver's side. So if the driver's side is acting up, you wouldn't have to remove the whole dash. You just have to remove that. It's a little awkward to get star or Torx drivers under there, but it can be done. Okay, with those pins removed, removing the glove box involves first dislodging this damper right here. It's a pin that sits in this socket right here. So if we slide it out like that, we can slide that damper up out of the way for a moment. And now we're ready to remove the actual glove box. So there's a tab over there. Push that out. This guy right here, push out. Contents come flying. Now you can see where the pin was removed right there. There are just two more brackets holding the glove box on, and this should pop right out. It pops out if you hold it at the right angle. So holding it right here, it just pops right out. Those two guys right there. Now we are going to want to remove the damper. It will fall out on its own, or it will get in the way if we don't take care of it right now. So getting the rod out of this requires a little bit of force, and out with it comes this little guy right here. So we're going to set that and our damper rod out. And then this guy, we just rotate it 180 degrees, and then it comes right out. Let's throw all these guys together. Up above the glove box, we have the rubber piece right here. This will need to come out. Now, this wood trim piece right here needs to come out as well. It's going to take a screwdriver to pry it out. There are clips holding it in place. Using a screwdriver, pry this corner up right here, get your finger behind, and then pull. You have to pull pretty hard. There are about 4 snaps holding it in place. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Once that's removed, you are going to remove that guy and that guy. 7mm bolt. The upper glove box section comes out by pulling very hard to release 2 snaps on the left, pulling very hard on the right to leave 2 snaps over there. There are 3 snaps along the bottom that can be viewed from the underside, and those have to come out as well. Once you pull very hard to get that released, there is this plug right here which has to be disconnected. That's the sensor detecting whether the glove box door is open or closed. Alright, now there is a trim piece that sits underneath the footwell. This guy right here. This needs to come out. There are 2 pieces that hold in right there. These need to be pried out with a screwdriver. Once these 2 pieces are pried open, it slides right out. There's a tab that sticks out in the back that secures the back end into the firewall of the truck. Coming around to the other side, there's a trim piece down below that is secured in with one single 7mm bolt. Once this 7mm bolt is out, this trim piece can be removed. It's held in with some snaps that wrap around the bottom of the front center console. Those snaps are located here, connecting to there, here, connecting to there, and then on the right side we have one more snap instead of a 7mm bolt, securing it to the side of the floor return. Moving now to the center console. This removal process starts with this grill above the center speaker. To remove this, we'll have to get a screwdriver on the side to pry up on the left and right. In order to avoid damaging the trim, we'll put some masking tape down along the sides. And now we are ready to pry this piece up. Alright, it took a bit of force, but I got the first one down here up, and that one came up really easy. And we'll move over to the other side here. And there we are, 4 tabs. With the speaker grill gone, we can now move to the 2 7mm bolts securing this entire speaker trim piece in place. Alright, that 7mm nut is gone, and this 7mm nut bolts. These are called bolts, those are gone. Now, this entire piece is now ready to come out. You see it comes up easy in back. And there are clips securing it in front. So again, a little bit of prying force to lift this up and out is required. This is never pretty and I can never do it one-handed, but there are 3 clips that just came released with a little bit of force. And now in order to remove this, I will need to disconnect the harness going to the rear speaker. And with that harness removed, this is now ready to go out. And now we move our attention to the 2 7mm bolts at the top of the center console. Okay, 2 7mm bolts have been removed from the top of the center console. And now this thing needs to come out. And so we're going to pull the center console out toward the cabin of the truck. So we'll start by gripping up here and then pulling out. Alright, again, that took a lot of force, but there are 6 clips in orange, no, 7 in orange, that had to come out. There are now 2 wiring harnesses down there and 2 up here that need to be unattached. Each of those harnesses comes off with a tab. There's a small tab inside there that needs to be pulled inward towards the wires. Likewise with this one, small metal tab on the left side that pulls inward, rightward toward the wires. This guy right here, there's a small tab on the bottom. Press up on that. And this guy right here again has a large tab on the bottom that needs to be pressed up on. Remove the digital display by removing these 6 7mm bolts. The display has two harnesses on the back. Remove them both. Remove the CD player by removing these 4 7mm bolts. Pull the CD player out gently. There are wiring harnesses on the back. Fortunately, all 4 of them have a tab on the top that can be pressed in order to remove them. Now it is time to remove the vents and their associated trim pieces that run all the way down to the floor. These are held in by clips, and so they just need to be removed. These ridges right here secure them in place, so the center console stuff has to be removed first, and then these can be removed by pulling straight out. After pulling out, there are a few harnesses on the back to remove. Remove the left vent and trim piece by pulling up, starting at the top, pulling up and out and toward the center of the cabin. And then there's one wiring harness on the back to be removed. At this point, you can almost see the part that needs to be replaced. If we kind of push this back a little bit and look inside there, you can almost see two little red tabs sticking out back there. That's the guy. This little piece right here on the left-hand side, this just pops right out, and then there's a harness on the back. The harness doesn't actually do anything. It's just a placeholder. Maybe this is for like switches for a tow package or something that I don't have on this model. Alright, this bottom center of the console with the line-in SD card and USB ports, that will be removed by removing these 2 7mm bolts right there, and then there are some 10mm bolts on the bottom on either side. With this piece out, we find 3 more wiring harnesses to remove. Okay, now the right vent needs to come out. It is secured in by clips. I'm going to start by pulling on the bottom and pulling outward. So I had to pull pretty hard, but there are 4 clips on the bottom, 4 clips on the top. I'm going to remove this trim piece right here, but I don't know how. Alright, this was a bit tricky, but I did it by reaching my finger in right here and finding a spot on the piece to actually press down right where that piece of insulation is. And by pressing out, I was able to get my finger in here and get a little bit of purchase, and then pull out to release clips along the perimeter. Now there's a piece of rubber, I don't know, trim that goes over it. I'm going to kind of work it out. There we are. Alright, on the passenger side, I'm going to remove this piece by reaching my fingers underneath and prying up. This has already been loosened and dislodged, but it was held in by several clips. So again, it took a little bit of force, but it came right out. On the passenger side, I'm going to get access to the fuses by reaching my finger into here and pulling out. Has already been loosened, but give a good sharp pull right here, and then it basically opens up like a little door, comes out, access to the fuses on this side. Alright, again on the passenger side, this piece of trim right here was a little bit tricky. You need to lift up really hard right here to unloosen that clip right there. This this rubber piece that goes all around the door frame. You'll just have to pry that out of the way. Lift up pretty good right here to unloosen the clip right there, and then you want to pull out this way to unloosen the 3 clips on this side that are securing it here, here, and here, here, and here. Alright, steering wheel removal. You need to remove the airbag first. So looking over on the side, we see there's a little hole there. I'm going to take something long and pointy, stick it in there until I hear a click, and then I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. Again, the battery has been disconnected. I'll go now, I'm going to turn that right now. Again, it goes in there until I hear a click. The battery has been disconnected for some time now, which is important because I would not want the airbag to accidentally deploy. So by pushing in, that releases the airbag, so this can start to shimmy out. Okay. Now with the airbag out, I've got 3 things to remove. One is that red harness right there, but I'll start with the 2 airbag clips right there. These are a little bit delicate. There is an orange tab that sits on top. Let's go ahead and focus there. And I just want to get a small screwdriver in there and pry those up in order to remove them. So come out with the screwdriver, and then I'll just gently kind of pop that up like that. Same thing over here. Just gently come in and pop it up like that. So they aren't fully up. Now they should just pop right out. Okay. And now I need to remove that guy. It's a little bit tricky. Yeah, that's a 2-handed job right there. I'm gonna have to pull up that clip right there. Of all the harnesses I've removed so far, this one was the most difficult. Let me get a screwdriver in above this little catch right here, and it was a little tricky to get out. All right, I'm going to remove this top harness right here by pressing down on this tab and then pulling out. If this were a platinum, this is a Lariat, but the platinum I believe has a heated steering wheel, and I think there's another harness that needs to be disconnected right there in the case of the platinum. Now I'm ready to remove that bolt. That is a 15/16 bolt. This bolt wasn't held on too tight, but still I'm lucky that I had a 15/16 inch socket handy. So that bolt removed, the steering wheel is now ready to come off. Okay, so we need to start removing the driver's side components of the dash assembly. So I'm going to start by removing this vent. I need to start shimmying up above and down below to get these clips to come out. And again, that's going to take a lot of force. Alright, we got that loose now. Coming out, there's a wiring harness on the back. I want to remove that. Alright, now I want to remove this trim piece right here. I'm going to start by sticking my finger in right here, pushing out so I can get purchase in there. Then I'll use my other finger to pry it out. Okay, With that pried out, I'm going to open it up like a door. There's this this ring around here, this rubber ring. I'm just going to work it out from behind there. Okay. Now I want to remove this piece right here. I'll start by getting the thumbs up under there, and it's just held in by several clips. Disconnect it from there. Make sure I leave this ring above. Okay. Yeah, it's just let's see, 5, 6, 7 clips. Alright, and now I want to remove this trim piece, and I'm going to start by lifting up down here. There should be a clip underneath it that I need to remove. And that clip is a little bit tricky. Not really keen to come out. Okay, that was pretty awkward, but I got that released up there, and then I just had to pull back up top and then down halfway down. I had to pull back out this way, and then I had to kind of shimmy it around the hood release up there to get that out, but eventually it came. Alright, now it's time to remove this gray piece of trim underneath the steering wheel. So I'm just going to start by pulling out. I've already unloosened the first few clips, but it's just basically held into place by several clips. Yes, so it hinges down through the door there, and then these two looks like 7mm bolts have to be removed. Those are not 7mm. Right, they are 8mm bolts, and I will remove those after I undo these wiring harnesses. Okay, so after a lot of hassle, I got this thing off of there. That was a pain. And I got my wiring harnesses undone. So now this piece is now ready to be removed via those two 8mm bolts. Okay, those two 8mm bolts are removed. So this is now ready to slide out. But you can see there's a tab that sticks up above there. So maybe this isn't such a simple thing to remove. You know what? It looks like this piece needs to come out first. So I'll remove the two 8mm bolts there and there. Okay. This plate now comes out. Two little tabs down there stick in and hold it in place. So that plate can now be removed, and now this piece should be ready to come out. Alright, took a little work, but I was able to pull these two tabs out, and now this piece is finally out. Time to start working on the steering column. I'm going to start by removing the bolts under here. Those are three 5.5mm bolts. With those 5.5mm bolts removed, I'm ready to disassemble the center, the two pieces right here, and take these apart. Note there's a little hook in back on the lower piece that secures it to the upper shroud of the steering column. I've got a lever there for the steering column tilt adjustment. There's around the shifter, there's a rubber grommet. I'll have to work the shroud around that. In fact, I think I might even, I'm going to see if I can lower the column in order to get the upper shroud out of there. Okay, removing the upper piece of shroud is complicated by the fact that there is this leather trim piece that sits above it, secured to the dash console, to the instrument panel. So I'm going to remove that by unleashing, or by unclipping the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 clips that secure the leather piece to the top of the steering wheel shroud to the instrument cluster. And by removing those, this upper shroud can come off. So I'll take the upper shroud out of the lower shroud and set those aside. Moving back over to the passenger side and placing some masking tape down here, I'm going to use that to protect the trim so that I can stick a screwdriver in and pry this up right here. And we see that has 2 large clips and 3 smaller clips on it. That piece. Seen from above, it gives us access to some bolts. Well, at least one bolt right there. Back over on the driver's side, similar thing. I'm going to put some masking tape right here to protect the trim, so I can get a screwdriver in here and pry this piece up. So, working a small screwdriver in. This is going to take 2 hands. Alright, I think I found a way to do it. Over on the left hand side, the side closest to the steering column. Get that in. And pry it up just a little bit, and then I can get the screwdriver in on the other side. There we go. It took 2 screwdrivers, but eventually I got purchase underneath. So now just a little upward force, and it should pop out. All right, second screwdriver, a little more force, it came up. You see this one has a little harness on the back side of it. Doesn't do anything. Must be for the Platinum edition. Alright, moving back over to the passenger side, fuse box area. I'm going to release these harnesses. These need to be free for when the dash comes out. So I'll just start down here with this bottom one. This white lever needs to come out, so I need to press down there. It's kind of a two-handed job. Okay, there's the first one. Now the second one. And the third one. He's pressed down with a screwdriver, and then I was able to pop this back a little bit, and now it can come the rest of the way out. Alright, so tricky thing is getting this out of there. And took a couple of screwdrivers, a lot of prying and wiggling, but eventually I got that loose. and I only cut myself a little bit. Now that this piece of harness is undone, this can go back in to its home. I might need to ultimately undo some other harnesses from down here. We'll see about that. Now, in order to remove the dash, the pillars need to come out. The dash piece, it wraps behind these pillars. So these pillar sections, they need to come off. So I'm going to start by removing this. So, after pulling this back, pulling a screwdriver around the side there will help you get this back. It gives you access to the 10mm bolt right there, which we'll remove, and then we'll do the same thing down here, removing the 10mm bolt there. Okay, so after those bolts are removed, we pull the pillar back and away just a little bit, and then we slide it out, and then we'll have to remove the harness for that speaker right there. Then we'll come over to the driver's side, pull these two out, and remove the 10mm bolts in there, and then remove this pillar piece. Alright, passenger side, I'm going to remove these 13mm bolts there, and there. Now, up in the dash there's a 13mm bolt that we need to remove. It's a little tricky to get down in there, but we'll need to remove. Alright, over on the driver's side, we actually have two bolts down in there we need to remove. So let's get to it. Alright, then we've got down 1, 2, maybe 3. I'm not sure if I need to take that one out. I'll figure it out later. To remove from on the passenger side. If we pull back the carpet, we reveal 4 8mm bolts. We're going to remove all 4 of those so that we can take that whole bracket off. And in the process of doing, we're going to unhook this wiring harness from the thing. Okay, having removed the 4 bolts and that bracket from this area right here, I'm now going to take this wiring harness, hook that, and then this can simply pop out with the screwdriver. A little bit of prying, but I'll work that out. Okay, that took a lot of prying, but it's out. Whew. Okay, over on the driver's side, at the base of the center console, I've got 2 8mm bolts that I have to come out here, and 1 7mm there. So yeah, upon further inspection, that was going to come out too. Alright, now we're going to disconnect the steering column. So, in order to do this, we need to disconnect the 10mm bolt in the center there, and then on the side, these 2 black ones, those are both 13mm. This bracket around the side. You can see them again from this vantage point, maybe. A little tricky, yeah, right there. 13 right there, 13 right there, and then the 10mm right there. Well, I should have done it earlier, but I realized I need to remove this whole rubber piece. So just pull it out, the whole thing, comes off as one big loop. Pull this out, because why not? Alright, over on the passenger side, we have behind the glove box these three harnesses. They need to be disconnected. Alright, also behind the glove box, we have another harness right here that we need to disconnect. Looks like there's a tab on the underside of it. Yeah, it pulls right out. There's the tab right there. So above the gray harness behind the glove box, that 10mm bolt right there needs to come out. Okay. I'm also going to move the rubber ring around the driver's side doorway. So just pull down from here and the whole ring comes. Alright, we're going to remove the bunting or insulation foam from here. And it looks like when we do that, we reveal another 13mm bolt that needs to come out. Okay, we got that final bolt out. The dash is feeling pretty loose now. We still have a little bit more with respect to wiring harnesses to remove. So I'm going to remove this black one and this gray one down here. So we're now going to remove the transmission cable. The transmission cable connects on the underside of the steering column. We're going to start by disconnecting this 8mm bolt right here. Alright, so using a screwdriver, we can pop this guy off just with a prying action of a flat screwdriver. You can pop that off. And then remove that. Now with that 8mm bolt removed, we can remove this black housing from the frame. Okay, so removing this from the steering column was a little bit tricky. First of all, you need to get this piece out, and this is a little bit tricky because the metal dips down so that it kind of locks itself in here, so it doesn't want to just slide out. Let's see if I can adjust the lighting here. So it doesn't just slide out. In order to get it out, and this is with the black piece still on, you have to take a screwdriver and you have to slide the head of the screwdriver down, 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 and then you can work it out. So that is how that piece comes out. Now, in order to get this thing to slide out, you can't see it from this angle, but right behind this plastic piece, right here, there is a little plastic tab that sticks out and sits in that groove right there. Also, there is a plastic tab that sticks out right behind there, and it sits into that groove right there. So, in order to slide this black bracket off, when it's in here, you have to take a screwdriver, come behind the top of this black piece and pry it up a little bit so that it can come loose over here. Same thing over here, take a screwdriver on the top, pry it up a little bit, and then you can slide it down off of this. Now, with this shifting mechanism to the transmission dislodged, we can unroute it so that, because it goes right there, we need to just kind of route it back around so we can remove the dash. And that's a little bit tricky because they have it kind of clipped onto the dash right there. So we're going to have to take a couple of screwdrivers and pry that piece out so we can route this around the dash. So this is now rerouted to the outside of the dash. So if we try to remove the dash now, it won't get tangled up in this. And that goes through the firewall to the transmission. All right, at this point, the dash is pretty loose. You can see it rocking around there. I think I'm ready to pull it back. Now, on either side of the dash, there are these pins that come through the dash chassis into the frame. And these oblige the dash, even as you're taking the dash and you're rolling it back, to bring it back out and not up and away, but to roll it back a little bit and then take it directly out. So these pins can slide out. You'll hear a little bit of squeaking from these pins as the dash is pulled out. I now have the dash pulled out about 1.5 inches, and this is an opportunity for me to check and see how all the wiring is doing. I want to make sure that all the harnesses that need to be unhooked are unhooked. Okay, coming over on the passenger side, I can see there are 2 more things I need to unhook. Those are for the radio. I believe those are both antennae. One for the satellite, one for the off-air antenna. Okay, at this point I've pulled the whole dash out and leaned it forward, and I've got everything connected except for one set of wires, and it's those guys right down there. They go under the floor mat and they go throughout the rest of the body. It's a large wiring harness coming from the dash to the rest of the car, and there's no harness up here to disconnect that and take the whole dash out. And the only way I can see really disconnecting that so I can remove the whole dash would be to remove both seats and then remove the carpeting on the floor and undo that wiring right there. I'm not going to do that because basically I'm far enough out. I can now have access to that door, or to the actuator motor right there. That's what I need to replace. And at this point, I suppose if I needed to do something with the heater core or something with the ventilation system, if I had something stuck in there or something that I was working on getting out, I've got the dash out far enough at this point to get that done. So I'm going to replace that, and then I'm going to work on getting this all back together. Okay, now time for the big exciting thing. I'm going to disconnect this. I'm going to pull off that red tab, and then I should be able to pull out this plug or disconnect it. Push down on there's a little black tab right there you need to push down on. Then you can remove it. And now to get this out, I need to hit 2 torque screws on either side. Okay, so I removed the bad one. This is actually the good one. So I removed the one that was there that was busted. And this is the door right here, or rather this is the door. See, it slides back and forth like that. And then this thing sits there, and there's a little gear that sits in there for the actuator. And as it turns like this, it opens and closes that door. So right now this is the cold position. This is where it's been stuck. That is the hot position, and then these are intermediate levels right here. So taking the good one, I can see that there is, on the gears, there is a tooth missing on one side. That is intentional. That tells it where this is supposed to sit in here. So I believe I need to move this to an intermediate position, it looks like, in order to get this to sit in straight. I'm going to set that at about 50%, and then I should be able to finesse this in. Okay, 2 Torx screws back in right there. Okay, my 2 Torx screws are back in place. Now I can plug this back in again. And then I'm going to push in the red tab. Okay. Now I need to finagle this dash back up into position. The key is getting these pins into their slots in the frame, and also the other tricky part is going to be getting the bolt for the steering column back in place. So this is the steering column assembly, and it ultimately needs to get back into that slot right there. Alright, I'm ready to start moving this dash back into position. I've taken the cables for the speaker that sits in the pillar, and I've just used masking tape to move them out of the way so they don't get caught up on the dash when I'm trying to reposition it. So I masked it up to the door frame over here, and I did the same thing on the other side. This was a big job. There are a lot of pieces to replace, starting here, and then I'm going to work my way over here, and then I'm going to work my way to these guys, and then around to these guys, and then to these guys, and then to these guys, and then up to those, and then around to those, and then back around to the glove box. So all in all, a whole lot of stuff had to come out. All that stuff that's sitting on top of the tonneau cover, all pieces of the dash. In addition to the big rubber piece of molding right there, and right there. Those also had to come out. So it didn't take a whole lot of muscle work to put this dash back into position. It seems to have slid back up there pretty easy. It's all the way flush on the passenger side, so I think I just need to push it in over on the driver's side, and that is sitting up flush right there. And checking up along the base of the window, it seems to be sitting up flush right there too. The screw holes right there, those are they appear to be aligned. Let's check over on the other side. Let's see, it looks like we came out a little bit. So I'll push that back in. And let's see, it should be a screw hole right there. That one does not seem quite close enough. So right now we are underneath the steering column, and we can see this did not all line up when I put it back in, but it actually has some play in it, so you can actually push it back, line it up, and then slide it forward under the bolt, just how it was before. And I said before that you needed to remove those 13mm bolts. That was wrong. You don't need to remove them. In order to get the steering column off, you only need to remove the 10mm bolt right there. So I think this is back in. I think I just need to go through in reverse order and hook all this stuff back together. So I'm going to start with some of the wiring harnesses. I'll work on that before putting any bolts in, I think. So I'm going to start up in here. So we are under the glove box, and we've got some antennae, the XM and the off-air antenna right here. I'm going to reconnect those. All right, coming in underneath the glove box, we've reconnected the XM and the AM FM antenna. Now we're going to replace this 10mm bolt right up in there. All right, got that 10mm bolt back in. Now I'm going to plug in this wiring harness. Okay. As long as I'm here, I'll reconnect these wiring harnesses. All right. All right, you three little piggies. Click, click, click. All right. So there's the steering column right there, and just replace that 10mm bolt right there. Those 13mm nuts right there, they didn't need to be removed. I did remove them in my case because I'm stupid, so I replaced those and retightened those as well. Okay, the transmission cable needs to be rerouted back up here to the steering column. So coming around to this side, it pretty much just sits behind here. We've got this tie down that attaches it to the frame right there. And then, which way do we go? I'll figure it out. Okay, so this got routed right behind there, and then it goes up, and the second hole right there is where it connects into the harness. I'm going to go over these wires, and then we need to connect this to here. So first, I'm going to take this guy, and I'm going to put in right there. And I'm going to put this up, and it should just clip into place. If I give it a sufficient push. There we go. And then this guy, push him back on. And then we got an 8mm bolt securing that back on. I'll tighten that down with a wrench. Okay, I retightened that bolt, securing the harness for the transmission cable in place. Now, as long as I'm down here, I will replace these two harnesses, and they're color-coded, black and gray. Alright, at this point, it's time to start replacing the bolts. So, in order to re-secure the bolts that hold the dash in place, I've got one bolt right here under the windshield that I need to replace, and 2 bolts on the driver's side under the windshield. So those are 13mm bolts. So let's get going on those. Okay, so 2 bolts on the dash under the windshield on the driver's side, 1 bolt on the dash on the passenger side under the windshield. Do those first because they're difficult to see, and it's easier to position the dash and line them up if the other bolts are in. So once those are in, then you'll put 1, 2, 3 bolts on the right hand side. 13mm, tighten them back up. Now we'll move on to 3 bolts. 1, 2, 3 on the left side of the dash, and 1 very long 13mm bolt that goes in there. Alright, so I replaced the 7mm nut right here, this 8mm nut right there. Now, the 8mm nut that went right there, I can't replace because so the bolt I can't replace because the nut that sits on the back of it came loose from the frame, and I had to just saw the head of that bolt off. So yeah, I'm not gonna be securing that back to the truck. Let's see. Now I also had to pull the carpet away. So there's this little guy that just kind of latches on to the bolt sticking out there to hold the carpeting down. So push him on. Okay, next is the insulation pads that go at the base of the columns. I don't know if these are for temperature control or noise control, but they go at the base of those pillars right there. Okay, I'm going to replace the bracket that secures the center console on the on the passenger side towards the center. In order to do this, you need to pull back the upholstery. Now that exposes 2 slots down there, 2 slots right there, and then there's another slot up there that this hook will hang on. So I'll just start putting these bolts back in. As I secure in the lower bolt, I want to make sure I hook this wiring harness back up right. So that went there. And then this stupid thing goes wrapped around the inside of this. Seems he's got bent a little bit after the dash was pulled back and leaned forward. Okay, so these 4 bolts have been resecured, and I put that bracket and that zip tie back in place as they were before. So now I can put the carpeting back in place. I'm going to make sure I tuck that underneath the floor vent. Everything looks good here. Okay. So, time to reconnect some harnesses here. So, I feel bad putting that in back in because it was such a pain to get out. But there you go, back in. And this is going to go back in here. And this one will go back in here. Okay. Alright, now I'm going to replace the handle for the pillar on the passenger side. Note that there are 2 little slots right here for these tabs to go into. So first, I'll pull up my masking tape, free up the harness for the little speaker. I'll reconnect that guy. Now I want to be careful as I'm putting this back on not to cinch the wires. Alright. Make sure I line up those 2 guys right there. Then if those are in, and they are now, I'll line up this stuff up here. Snap it in. Yeah, that looks good. Now I'm going to replace the 2 10mm bolts that secure the handle. Okay, time to put the pillars back on. So I'm going to remove this masking tape that I used to keep the harness for the small speaker and those pillars out of the way. Free that up. Make sure I don't cinch the wires as I put this back in. I want to be mindful of the curtain airbag right there. And then I'll put this back up. Okay, now I'm going to replace the covers that snap in on the dash right below the windshield. And then, remember on this one, there's this little guy that just kind of rests in here because he doesn't have the doodad that I guess the Platinums have. Alright, it is time to replace the shroud that goes over the steering column. So there are these 3 7mm bolts that hold it together. I'm going to start with the top piece. The top piece needs to be resecured to the leather shielding that goes at the base of the instrument console. So just need to line it up, and put in the 6 tabs on those slots. Okay, so I wrapped the piece of that leather shielding around the bottom of the shroud, and it took some finagling, but I got the shroud positioned back in place. The top of the shroud kind of wraps around this rubber grommet around the gear shifter. Now I just need to get the bottom piece into place. Okay, that was super awkward, but I got the shroud back around and in place, and top and bottom put back together, and then I got the 3 5.5 millimeter bolts put back into the bottom, so that should be all secured together now. Now I'm going to take this trim piece and put this back on. So to start, we got these tabs that we put in here. Okay. So that kind of holds it in place, allowing you to do a little bit of work. So first of all, there's this piece. So there's 2 tabs over there. They go in those slots. Okay. So I got them in the slots, holes lined up. Okay. Now I need to take those 4, I think they're 8 millimeter bolts, and put them back in place. Well, this is super awkward, but we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 bolts, and so I'm just going to tighten those down now. And I still have the metal tabs right there going behind the harness of the dash. Alright, got those 4 8 millimeter bolts tightened down. Now I'm ready to rewire in the buttons for the lower part of the dash on the driver's side. Okay, so we got the headlight knobs and the pedal adjuster knobs and the start button harness rewired. So now I'm ready to fold this back up, and there are clips there, and there, and so this should clip into the dash and secure itself in place. Well, yeah, that is back together. This isn't flush right here, but I double checked it and all the clips are in place. So I'm not sure exactly why that isn't coming flush. But I did take this whole dash apart, so maybe it never really goes back together again quite right. Alright, now time to put in this trim piece that goes around the left floor section. That slot there is for the hood release, and you kind of have to open the hood release a little bit to get that to slide in there. It's a little bit tricky to get in. There are 1, 2, 3 clips on it, two that lock going this way, and 1 that locks going down. I'll do that one last. Focus on these 2 first. Okay. So that clip is lined up, and that clip is lined up, and I can kind of make my way around to see that the slotted area down there is lined up. Can't catch it on the film here, but and then after those 2 are in, then I'll be able to line that 3rd clip up. So snap, snap, Much of a snap. And then push down. Okay. Alright, it's starting to come back together. Alright, next piece is this trim piece right here. And I want to make sure that I'm squared away right here. So this black tab should be coming just behind the pillar handle piece. And that's good. And then I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 clip slots that these are going to go into. One of the white clips broke on this, so let's see how well this stays in without that 6th clip. Looks like it's in there pretty solid. Alright, now I'm going to put on the rubber ring that provides the airtight, watertight seal on the door. So, rubber ring is back in place. Now I'm ready to put this footboard back in place. There are several clips on the bottom. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And before I do that, I want to double check. The carpeting has these slots in it right here, and then there are these little grooves right here for the carpeting to sit in. Alright, let's put the steering wheel back on, run these through here, plug that back in, put that 15/16 bolt back on, tighten it down, no wobble in it now. It was a little bit at first, but not now. Now I'm going to put the airbag back in, plug it into these 3 things. Alright, push the airbag back in, and then it clicks, but it still has a little bit of play for the horn. Alright, so we got clips there, 2 there, 1 there, and then 1 down here. So I'm going to line these 3 clips up here and give it a push in. I'll push that in right down there. Alright, next piece is the cover over the fuse box. So these tabs go in those slots, and then the door swings shut and then snaps into place. Then we got this piece right here, clips in. Alright, now before we put the this footboard in, we're going to replace the rubber ring that goes around the door frame. This guy. Okay, so the ring that provides the air and watertight seal around the door frame has been replaced, and now I'm ready to put this board back in. Before I do that, I want to make sure that the carpet is hooked around the notches. Those aren't bolts right there. They're the notches. So make sure the carpet is hooked around. And I can replace this board. Okay. Back to some of the dash materials on the interior. So, passenger side vent. It just clips right in. 2 clips on the bottom, 2 clips on the top. Wow. It's a lot easier than taking it out. This guy right here. There's a little harness that goes into the back of that. I'm not sure what normally goes in there. Maybe you platinum owners can leave a comment about what happened there. Alright, now I'm going to put this thing back in. There are 2 10mm bolts and 2 7mm bolts that secure this guy in place. The 10mm go down at the bottom, the 7mm go up on top. And some wiring harness to put back in place here. Okay, so reconnected the cigarette lighter, the USB, and the SD card harness, and took the other harnesses and just kind of routed them up to the CD tray slot there. So I know I've got clearance to put this stuff back in and not get other harnesses caught up in there. There is a tab on either side, more like a prong that just sticks in a square hole. Alright, then I just need a second hand so I can secure those 7mm bolts back in place. So now that those bolts are secured, I'm ready to put other trim pieces back in place. With this guy, I need to reconnect the 12 volt and 120 volt power supply back in there before snapping this guy back into place. And there it is back in place. Now I got this other one with the 4-wheel drive knob. I need to reconnect that harness right there, and then I can put this back into place. Then I can put this back into place. Alright, there's the CD player back in place with the 4 harnesses or wires that go into the back of it. I'm going to now replace the 4 7mm bolts that hold it in place. Alright, so those bolts are secured. Now I routed these 2 pieces of wiring harness through that slot right there. That goes into the instrument cluster that's going to go up on the center console here. Now I'm getting ready to put the display screen back in. Before I do that, I want to make sure that I've got these 2 pieces of wiring harness routed through that slot right there. I'll need that later when I attach the faceplate of this whole thing. And then I've got these 2 pieces right here. These are going to go into my display screen right there. Okay. So those bolts are secured. So now I need to take this button panel cluster mess and put that back on. So I got 2 harnesses that are going to connect right there and 2 up on top. They are kind of color coded. Red goes to black and the gray goes to gray and black. So now that the wiring is connected, I just need to push this in, there are several orange clips. Those orange clips are all going to find their mate, and this will all snap into place. And then I've got two holes right here for 7mm bolts, and then that will be back in place. Okay, now this dash piece with a center tweeter comes back in. There are 3 clips up front, 2 screw holes in back. I just need to connect the wiring harness to the speaker. Now with that connected, I can set this back in place. I want to be careful that I don't cinch the wire right there by letting it sit right there. So the wire is going to have to go under there, and I'm ready to drop these 3 clips into place. Now I've got 2 7mm bolts to put in place in back. Alright, those 2 bolts are now tight. So now I'm going to take the grill over the center tweeter here and push that down into place. I want to be careful not to bend the grill. I want to make sure that this front edge of the grill stays behind the piece of trim that it sits on top of. So behind there, as I don't want to go in front but behind. Alright, moving down to the base of the center console, we've got this piece of trim that we're going to put back on. Notice there are little clips. There are 3 of them, 1 on the right side, 2 on the front, and then on the left side, that actually secures in place with a 7mm screw. So try to get it into place. Got that first clip in place. Take the 7mm screw, put that in, up in there. Alright, since that screw is now in place, I've got 1 clip right here that I've already pushed into place and secured. Now I need to make sure that this second clip on the so here we are, the second clip on the right side. Need to make sure that gets in and secured. And then there is a 3rd clip on the far right side. And then push that in and secure it. Okay. There we are. Now, back under the glove box, we're going to put this panel back into place. There is 1 prong that sticks out the back, and then 2 clips on the front. So, a prong in the back goes up in there. As you can clearly not see, but I can see it. And then the upper glove box storage area has this prong in back, kind of like the CD player, which I forgot to point out earlier when I was installing that. This prong in back sits right in there. So after the prong is put in, I need to make sure that those clips lock into place, and that white clip there fell off, so let's put it back on. Alright, and before we put this in, we need to make sure that we reconnect the sensor for the glove box door open closed. That guy right there. Okay, that harness for the sensor is connected, and I just need to watch that prong in back, make sure it gets into its slot, which I can kind of feel. Okay, so I resecured that 7mm nut and that 7mm nut. Now I'm ready to put on this trim piece. It is secured in with several clips. No wonder I got this out without breaking it. I suspect it will go in a lot easier. Yeah, it did. Now, I'm putting this rubber piece right here. It's got several tabs that lock into these spots right here. Alright, that piece is now resecured back into place. Now, in preparation for putting the glove box back in, I need to reinstall the damper mechanism. So I've got 3 parts for it. A rod, a little gear, and a little gear housing. So the gear housing has 2 wings on the back, and they land up in there. So I need to put this in and then rotate it and 90 degrees. And I believe either way is good. Yeah, you can rotate it 90 degrees clockwise or counterclockwise. It's the same thing.
Hey! What's up, buddy? Say hi to
Now, this little gear thing right there, the small one goes in first, the small side goes in first. So, now it's in there. The larger set of teeth should be on the outside. Very sticky, gooey. So now I need to get this damper rod in and around that gear mechanism. So I learned that the big side of the gear goes in, so the little gear is facing out. And then I can put this guy in. A little hard to get through both ends, but now he's in. I feel it go back really smooth, but if I pull on it, I feel a little bit of resistance. So I'm going to push it all the way back in preparation for reinstalling the glove box. So the glove box has these 2 arms right here. We're going to grab up and grab these. Okay, so those have now clamped on. Now I've got that rod right there that needs to dampen. This one first. So first this side, I'm going to push this guy in and then slide the glove box in a little bit more. to push this guy in, slide the box in a little bit more. So now he's all the way in, and he also is all the way in. Now I need to take this damper rod. I'm going to pull it out, and see there's a little hole there. I'm going to put it in the big hole. Let's see it from the other side. And then snap it into the smaller area. Alright, glove box is now reinstalled. Okay. Alright, one more thing about the glove box. These two pins right there on the underside need to be replaced. So, pin goes up in the area right there, and then it has to slide into its position. Now I'll do the other one. So it's actually a little bit tricky with these pins because there is a channel right there.
Western Chemical, buy your pickup, put fuel in it, insurance, tire, and even pay you to run out there.
Alright. Now it should slide. There we are, in position now. Moment of truth. I'm going to reconnect the battery.
Wow, that's really something you took on a project like that. I'm impressed.
It makes me feel good
Yeah.
to get things like this done.
Especially the $1,000 they'd charge you for labor.
Yeah. It's nice to save a little bit of money. Okay, so I got her fired up now. I've got an airbag light on there and might need just a start-stop cycle to figure out what's going on there. It's off, which I guess it should be since there's nobody in the passenger seat. I'm not sure what's going on with the airbag situation here, but as far as the temperature control goes, I've got it set at 68, 65 right now. Let's turn it just all the way cool. Let's turn on the AC. Yeah, AC's on. And I got cold air coming out there. That's good. Cold air coming out there, which is now. If I turn the heat up, I got hot air here. And